Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing about disaster management, and it has been there. Two questions have been there in GS paper 3 with respect to disaster management. So let's begin. Okay. Now the first question is: flooding in urban area is an emerging climate-induced disaster. And then it says discuss the causes of this disaster. Mention the features of two such major floods which have occurred in the last 2 decades in India, and describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. So let's start how we are going to segregate the question into parts. Now the first part is saying that this is a climate induced disaster, so you have to discuss the causes. Then it says that the features of 2 such major floods that have occurred in the last 2 decades. Fine. And then it says describe what the policies and frameworks with respect to the management of this disaster, that is floods. So understand, they are saying that flooding in urban areas, so they are talking about what? Urban floods. Now the point is that they could have asked another disaster also, for example landslides, etc. But when you will be going through the current affairs sections, you will find that flooding is one of the major disasters that has been occurring in the country. Why? Because as per the reports which were there with respect to National Disaster Management Authority, they said that nearly 64% of the Indian sub-districts are witnessing floodings or are witnessing flooding in the regions. Then as per the reports of IPCC, the reports of the IPCC is telling us about that there will be increased risk, as well as there will be increased frequency of this flooding disaster that is going to happen in the country with the coming times. So as per the reports of IPCC, we will witness what? High frequency floods in near future. Fine. Okay, so with this you can go with the introduction part. That means you can either go explaining what are urban floods, you can either explain it through the stats and data as I have told you. So as you feel comfortable with, this is how we can start the question. Now the second part says that discuss the causes of this disaster. That means what is the reason why we are witnessing so much of floods in present time, and especially they have said urban areas. That means what is, just don't go with the floods. Why? Because in rural segment also we are having floods. Then why only urban areas they have been focusing on? So the reason for, or what you can say, the causes why we are witnessing urban floods is, first you can say rapid urbanization. Now rapid urbanization, where? Example in the areas of Gurgaon. Just now only I was going through one of the videos which was talking about how rain is affecting the regions of Gurgaon. Why? Because we consider it to be one of the big best developed metropolitan area, and then too, if the condition of these cities are such, what better we could expect from the other places. So rapid urbanization, then followed by deforestation. Rapid urbanization along with poor drainage system. Is again leading to what? Increased floods or very high frequency floods. Fine. Now, other than that, when we are having poor drainage system, now this is not the case of only Gurgaon. Why? Because the way Delhi also has been planned, it was like way back in 1976, the structures were framed, etc. So presently what is happening is that these structures require revamping. So remodeling of all the structures is required, which probably we are not doing. That's the reason why we are facing these disasters and we are not able to cope with it. So next reason is unplanned development. Unplanned development. Unplanned development. Now, unplanned development is leading to what? For example, the buildings that have been formed, the policies, the frameworks are not actually implemented effectively. So that's one of the reasons of disasters. Now, other than that, what is happening is that too much of emission of greenhouse gases and then eventually global warming. All this is like climate-induced changes. So climate changes is leading to increased flooding. Fine. Now these are certain causes because of which we are experiencing urban flooding. Of course you can add on many more, but I am here just to explain you how to go about the question. Now, one part of the question was this. Now, the second part says that mention the features of two such major floods which have occurred in last 2 decades. So, here I would say that the last 2 decades which I have probably witnessed is that one was your Mumbai floods. And the other one was your Chennai floods. Now, Mumbai floods and Chennai floods. Now, when I say Mumbai floods, that means when Mumbai floods happened, that means there were close to 500 to 1,000 loss of lives. So, the feature which was associated with Mumbai flood was that close to I would say approximately 1,000 lives lost, damage to property, damage to assets, etc. Now, going with Chennai floods, again close to 1,500 loss of lives. Fine. Then damage to assets, property, environment, etc. Fine. Now, this could be described in detail. This is just like certain facts that I am telling you, because the question asked you that last 2 decades, so 20 years, these were the 2 floods. One was in 2005, other one was in 2015. Fine. So, after that they said that describe the policies and frameworks that aim at tackling such floods. That means, do we have any kind of plan? Do we have any kind of act, laws, which would probably deal with, how we are going to tackle these floods? So, the policies and framework with respect to dealing with floods. So, policies and frameworks to deal with floods. Now, first is we have National Disaster Management Plan. That means how we are going to manage the disaster. For that we have a certain plan. For that we have the framework decided. So, according to this plan, we are talking about how disaster risk reduction should be there. How we are going to deal with people who are already affected by the disaster. So I would say that they are more prone to rehabilitation and all. So rehabilitation. And at the same time, we shall also deal with, that means if the disaster has occurred, that means how we are going to check it. So checking of disaster. So you can say it is like a prompt response. Then you have recovery, etc. Fine. Other than this, we have National Disaster Management Act, NDMA. National Disaster Management Act. Under this act, we have got National Disaster Management Authority, that means at national level, and then we have SDMA, that is State Disaster Management Authority. So both of them will be dealing with what? Checking of disaster. Fine. Now this was something with respect to the policy and framework, what better could be done. So other than this, we have plans with respect to smart cities. That means a more well-framed, well-planned, because as I highlighted that we have unplanned urbanization, we have unplanned development, there's rapid urbanization. Why? Because people are constantly migrating from small town to larger cities. So when there's like so much of migration happening, then these people will be requiring the habitation place, and so much of burden will be there on the land. So in order to see all that, we are working towards smart city missions. So smart cities are about planned urbanization and standard development. Fine. Other than this, we also have what? Various tribunals. We have Forest Right Acts in order to check clearance of forest. Fine. Okay. Now these were certain policies and frameworks. Other than that, when we are talking about disaster management with respect to floods, we can also write about flood management program. So here FMP, that is your flood management program. That means separately identifying that if flood is there, then how we are going to deal with it. Okay, so flood management program. Good afternoon, Kritika. Fine. So this is a basic layout how you are going to deal with this question. Now you can eventually add on and subtract depending upon your choices, but this is how the answer has to be attempted. Fine. Now let's move on to the next question. The next question says, what is disaster resilience? What is disaster resilience and how is it determined? Now describe various elements of resilience framework. Also mention the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, DRR. Fine. Now see what they are saying is, what is disaster resilience? Now you have to be very particular that they are not asking you what is disaster, they are asking you what is disaster resilience. That means how the person or how the country or eventually the organizations are going to deal with when the disaster is there. So what is disaster resilience? How is it determined? That means how do you know that the organization or the country is they are ready for the disaster, or they are disaster resilient? Like how would you determine, or even for that matter, how would India know that yes, we are very much determined with respect to disaster resilience? Now the next says that describe various elements of resilience framework. That means what comprises of resilience framework? Very beautiful question. Why? Because they have targeted disaster resilience, and then they have asked you what? Define disaster resilience. And then they said what? Describe the elements of disaster resilience. Then they asked you that how are you going to determine that disaster resilience is there, and on this basis they have asked you what? Global targets of Sendai framework. Now very important, that means they asked you the targets of Sendai framework. Now understand, this is such a beautiful question, very direct question, very beautiful question. So there was nothing that you have to do extra except understanding what is the demand of the question. So what is disaster resilience? Let's begin with it. So disaster resilience is what? The ability to adapt, to recover and stand up when the disaster is there. That means, do we have the ability to to adapt to the things that are happening? Do we have the ability to recover with the disaster that we are going to witness? And do we have the ability to stand up when the disaster is just close to us? So disaster resilience is about, this is what is disaster resilience. Now they say, how is it determined? That means how would you know that whether you have disaster resilience or not? So determination for disaster resilience. First is that is if you are able to handle the risk. So first they are saying what? Risk determination. Are you able to determine the risk? Then they are talking about what kind of preparedness do you have? Fine. What kind of recovery procedures you have? Then what kind of resistance program you have? Then how can you adapt, or what kind of adaptation protocol you have? So if you see, there is risk determination, there is preparedness, there is recovery procedure, there is resistance program, and then there is adaptation. That means this tells that how much disaster resilient you are. Other than that, you can also write about how are you able to check the vulnerability of the region. For example, if you see the regions of Uttarakhand, now the Uttarakhand regions are more prone to landslides, whereas if you see the regions of West Bengal, what is happening is that the West Bengal regions are prone to cyclones. Coming to the areas of Assam, then coming to the areas of UP, Bihar. So UP, Bihar are again, they face droughts, right? So that is also a disaster. Here we are discussing about floods. Here we are discussing about cyclones. Then we have drought also. So what happens is, depending upon the regions which about the geography, then you can analyze the vulnerability of the regions, and similarly you can make the respective protocols. Fine. Now if we are prepared with this, do we have the sustainability? That means how long can we withstand that? How long we can, for example, when cyclone is there, for example, when landslides are there, we actually don't know when it's getting over, or when is the last time that okay, this is it, and we'll be able to be okay with it. So this is something we don't know. So till that, are we able to sustain? Do we have so much of resources? If that is there, if we have met all those kind of challenges, then definitely we are determined to be disaster resilient. Fine. Now going to the other part of the question. The other part of the question says, describe various elements of resilience framework. Now it is very much common with respect to the first part of the question. So what you can do here is that you can play very smart. Now how can that be done? So next is your elements of disaster resilience. Fine. Now in the elements of disaster resilience, you can again talk about what planning you have. Fine. With respect to disaster, that means if tomorrow we get the news that okay, this kind of disaster is imminent to come, now what kind of planning you have? Then do we have all the rehabilitation sources ready? Do we have the plans for risk reduction? That means, for example, if we have a forest, right, and there's too much of rainfall, we know that the soil has the capacity of what to absorb the rainfall or the rain that the water that is coming on. So what is going to happen is that way forests act as very important part. So in that case, what methods do we have for risk reductions? Now other than that, what they talk about is what kind of procedural frameworks we have. Fine. Other than that, what kind of collaboration we are having with other states, countries for that matter? So other element will be collaboration with states. To deal with the disaster. Other than that, once we have collaborated, other than that, education and awareness program. For that, people, or you can say a lot of people stay in the areas or they have like illegal encroachment. Illegal encroachment is leading to disaster, more of loss of life. This could be the reason of more of loss of life. So what can be done is, in that way, there need to be education and awareness program. Fine. Now this education and awareness program will help in dealing with the this is going to strengthen the local people. So in case if anything happens, then they themselves are there to safeguard themselves instead of waiting for the authority to reach there. Now other than this, what are the elements of prevention of the disaster? That means disaster is bound to occur, we also know, but how can we prevent loss of life? That also decides the, that should be also there in the disaster resilience elements. So prevention of disaster. That means disaster is bound to occur. No hue and cry over that. But how can prevention be there? Fine. Now these were certain things with respect to elements of disaster resilience. Then how can we determine that whether we are disaster resilient or not. Now the next part of the question says that also mention the global targets of Sendai framework. That means what are the targets of Sendai framework. So targets of Sendai framework has been given with respect to target A, target B, target C. So let's discuss about each target. So the first one is your target A. Now what is target A is talking about? So going with target A. Now target A talks about what? That all the disasters that have been happening globally, we should check the mortality rate. So reduce mortality. That is first target or target A of Sendai framework. Next is target B. Now what is target B talking about? So target B says that reduce the number of affected people. Reduce the number of affected people. Now C. What is target C all about? So target C talks about reduce the economic losses. Reduce the economic losses. Why? Because this directly affects the GDP of the country. Now target D. So target A, target B, target C, target D. What is target D all about? Target D is talking about reduce the loss of critical or reduce the loss with respect to critical infrastructure. Fine. So we have target D also here. Now target E is talking about what? Increase the number of countries. Number of countries. In order to deal with the disasters. Target F is talking about international collaboration in order to deal with the disaster. Target G is talking about what? That means if the disaster is there, it's very much close. So how is it going to be effective to know that the disaster is approaching? So before preparedness. So that is about G. That is EWS. That is early warning system. Fine. Now under A you are having again A1, A2, A3, then B again, B1, B2, C again, multiple subparts to it. So it's all upon you if you want to go more in detail. But since the limit of the words is 250, so if I would have to attempt the question, I would have attempted this way. That means I would have mentioned about target A, target B, target C, target D, E, F, G eventually, and what are the targets with respect to the respective target. And this is what is Sendai framework all about. And yeah, this is about the second question with respect to disaster management. So I have explained the first part, first question with respect to urban floods. Fine, we have done the entire part of this. Then we went for disaster resilience. I told you about disaster resilience. I told you about how it could be determined whether you are disaster resilient or not. Then what are the elements of disaster resilience and what are the targets of Sendai framework. So all the three parts of the question has been covered. Thank you so much. All the best for your this optional paper. Thank you so much.